Standing up for families throughout Nevada, telling the stories of working women and men. This is our voice and our community. We are Nevada with your hosts, Leonard Cardinelli and Nick the Archangel.
Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up. Come on, rise up.
Good morning and welcome to the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show every Friday morning, 9 a.m. right here on KLAV, 12:30 a.m. with your co-host Nick the Archangel and Leonard Cardinelli. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, and also we want to make sure we welcome this morning Jose Solario from Si Se Puede, who is our resident co-host, the trio, and we welcome you here this morning, Jose.
I'm glad to be here.
Good morning, Jose.
Thank you.
And remember, we invite all of you to be co-hosts by calling into the show at 702-731-1230, 702-731-1230. And the 1230 should be easy to remember because you're dialed into it on your AM radio, which you should be every Friday morning.
So let's get to the news. I guess we could start with Michigan. Apparently the legislature passed a right-to-work law, and it's now going to the governors to sign off on, which what does right to work mean exactly?
Yeah, well, it means the right to get fired.
Right.
That's what we say here. This is what we have in Nevada, and other states have been looking at it, and they are eager to look. This was a program that was sponsored by and initiated by the Koch brothers, and this is. I'm sure that they are just still seething about getting their butts kicked in the election and all that money spent for nothing. And now they are doing everything they can to make sure that next time around they can somehow weaken the people's voice even further, and they'll do it state by state if they have to.
Right, so without collective bargaining, right to work means you have the right to work and you have the right to be fired for no cause whenever they so choose. Is that fairly accurate? Is that fair to say?
I'm thinking whenever I see right to work, it sounds good, but when you look at all the details, it's the opposite of it. Actually, worker rights is what we believe in. The middle class is workers should have rights, and the right to work is almost entirely the opposite of worker rights.
Well, let's look at Nevada. Over the last couple of years, they've really gone after employees and especially public employees. And the employees that have collective bargaining have somewhat retained. They gave up, cost of living raises, and they froze payouts and gave up some merit increases or froze merit increases. But the state workers who do not have collective bargaining and do not have a contract per se, they rely on the NACs, the Nevada Administrative Code, for their, lack of a better term, for their contract, which means they can only change the contract in the legislature because they have to change the law. And they, they had to give up a 5% cut. Along the way, they have to take furlough days now, from what I understand, about 12 furlough days a year. And a furlough day means that you're off for the day, but you also lose your pay. So instead of getting paid for 10 work days every 2 weeks, you get paid for 9 work days. And you do that once a month for a year, and you're talking about thousands of dollars that are taken out of your income. And as the inflation rate continues to rise, which it's estimated to be about 7 or 8% over the next year because the economy is recovering, and you have no COLAs, and let's say you agree to keep your pay flat like we have for the next year or two, well, the inflation rate is going up, and you have no cost of living increases, so you're literally making less and less every year. So we'll keep an eye on that as we move forward. And
yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting. In the New York Times this morning, there's an article, and they say that the effort of Michigan is the latest in what has become a wave of renewed interest in such legislation, and they're saying that particularly as states search for ways to emerge from the economic downturn. Now, this is, I don't know how the Times fell into this, but this is classic propaganda where they talk about the fact that it's the working people of course that are contributing to this economic downturn, and the unions and the workforce is actually exacerbating this problem, and this is where we need to go. We need to go to right to work because this will somehow look. I'm going to officially term this the 1% Twinkie defense. Okay, where the workers are the problem and the $30 million or $300 million bonuses are not the problem. And so this is the 1% Twinkie argument, where it's actually the workers who are the ones who are dragging the economy down. And as we move through the rest of this program, especially during the This Week in Labor History and some other things that I have planned, this argument is not going to work anymore. And we're going to be seeing this as we move forward into each individual state's legislative sessions, right? Because, and we talked about this before the general election. The general election is great, and everybody gets excited about the tickets on the national stage, but it all comes down to local politics, and this is Michigan, if for no other reason, should be an example of why every Nevadan needs to pay attention to what's going on in their local legislature, because this stuff pops up.
So also in the news, as you know, this week the Supreme Court met to look at the education tax initiative and make a determination on whether or not they're going to allow it to move forward to the legislature.
Right.
And I guess there's a lot of issues we can comment. One of the issues that I thought was interesting is one of the arguments on the opposition from the business side was that they're going to charge a 2% margin tax on all businesses with $1 million, or higher
Profit.
gross receipts.
Yeah.
And well, according to the article, it says that whether you're showing a profit or not, you're going to get hit with this 2% margins tax. So let me put it in perspective a little bit. So you have a $20,000 tax burden on $1 million in revenue, right? So that works out to about 50 cents per day. And depending on the type of business, that could be less than a penny per transaction, depending on if you get into thousands of transactions. Let's say a business has 100 sales per day. That means the additional cost would be about 50 cents to each customer. Really not going to kill jobs or kill a business. If you have 1,000 sales, the additional cost drops to a nickel per sale. So while they're trying to say this is going to really cut into the businesses and cause them to lay off employees, and what we're talking about per transaction or per customer, per person, we're talking about a relatively small amount of money that could generate up to $800 million to $1 billion.
But I'm sorry.
Well, let me just finish.
Yeah.
They're also saying that if we are able to increase this tax and put a margins tax and deposit $800 million to $1 billion into the state fund, that the state will, they're assuming that the legislature and the state will take other money and move it elsewhere. And I don't know where that assumption comes from.
Fantasy.
No, is it like saying it could snow tomorrow?
No,
I mean, it really
this is the
could,
thing.
right?
Well,
Possibly.
So that hearing was fascinating on so many different levels, and I think one of the most important levels. And afterwards, and I saw the reports, and of course they were trying to talk about tax and things like that. But look, this is really the bottom line with this thing, and this was made by Frank Flaherty with Nevada State Education Association. This initiative was signed by 152,000 Nevadans. This has become an effort, of course, to provide dedicated funding to K through 12 education. But now it's much more than that because of the volume of signatures and the number of Nevadans who said they want to see education improved. This is an initiative process. This is the only way for the people, for you and I, you sitting out there and me sitting right here, to make some sort of change and to have some sort of impact on issues. And what this is now a fight about is not about taxes. What this is a fight about is suppressing our voice. Because and once again, here we see it again. We see a ton of money from private interests who are doing everything they can to stop the process, to slow the process down. And they're throwing...
How many signatures were required?
72,000. So
they got more than double.
Oh, yeah, more than double. So this is what this is about now. This is what the Supreme Court is thinking about now. They're not they're not considering the taxes and the economic issue and how much money goes in and how much money goes out and what gets shifted around and the hokey pokey that's trying to be portrayed by the opposition. What they're trying to look at is the constitutionality, the making sure that the people's voice is restored, and making sure that all the issues that have to do with the petition, and again, this isn't about the constitutionality of the petition or the language in the body of the petition. This is focusing on the summary, the 200-word summary of the petition, and how much you can fit in that summary. And the questions were raised. Are you going to try and pack a bunch of hypothetical language into a 200-word summary? And will that serve the needs of the people? And of course, we say no. You can't put all that stuff. You can't put hypotheticals.
Well,
in
you
there.
assume that the money will be used for what it's earmarked for, and they're saying you can't assume that it will be used for K through 12. That it may get lost in the minutia, but I believe that the legislators that I know are responsible enough and they care enough about education to make sure that money gets to where it's earmarked for.
Yep.
So I think I see this as a very, very simple issue. Here in Nevada, we have corporations doing business like Walmart and Kmart that are paying $0 in taxes, absolutely nothing.
And no inventory tax.
And they're charging Nevadans the same price for the same products as they do in other states where they do pay, taxes. So this is just leveling off the playing field, doing what's fair, getting taxes from businesses that pay taxes in almost every other state in the nation but Nevada. And we're saying, hey, step up to the plate, pay your share of our community investment, and let's invest in education. It's very simple. This is not complicated. However, they do try to complicate it. They try to say, well, it's a 2% on gross margins, and they talk about people being misled. Hey, nobody's being misled. It's time to invest in education, and it's time for corporations to step up and participate in our community like they do in almost every other state in the country.
Yep.
What else is going on in the news, Nick? Anything else?
Well, this was a big week, and I'm glad that Jose is with us here this morning because, the two things that happened that were really impacted our local Nevadans all throughout the state is the education initiative, but also down here in the south there was the county commission meeting on UMC and the efforts to privatize the governance of UMC. And Jose, I know that you were there at the county commission meeting. This was round 2 of this meeting, and the intent of this county commission meeting was the same as the first one, where there was an effort to put a bill draft into place that would discuss governance, and again with the idea of privatizing UMC, which is not the right way to go. And I have a bunch of different clips from the meeting, and one of the things that I included on here are sound from Jose, yourself, and also other members of the We Are Nevada Coalition who spoke against this privatization. But the first clip I want to play for you guys is a clip from Commissioner Lawrence Weekly, and it's kind of funny because I mentioned the Twinkie effect earlier, and I want you to listen to what he describes here.
Mr. Brannaman, one thing that I can tell you, and I said this to him in our personal briefing, is that I know that the staff that work at the hospital, they're totally confused as to what's going on. And I think that it's our responsibility here today to dispel a lot of that confusion. People are here today with the mindset that we're here to discuss closing the hospital, and that needs to be addressed. And as I said, hold on, I got a few bullets here that I wrote down. I think that there needs to be a lot of clarity, and we've discussed this, that people should not have to come to work feeling this way, feeling that they don't have a clue when they get in the parking lot if they're going to be big chains and bolts on the door, that they don't have employment. This is not, unfortunately, what's the bakery place that just closed down? Wholesome Bread. Long gone the Twinkies. These folks are not Twinkies, all right? Let's be real. These are humans, all right? I think we all realize that we have to find a dedicated revenue stream. We all understand that we have to find a better revenue stream, and that's what we have to do. That's our responsibility. We cannot continue to sit back and allow the management or whomever at UMC to think that Clark County is going to continue to be the bailout plan. That can't continue to happen. But I think that at the end of the day, we also can't sit here and make those folks at the hospital feel like we want to do away with them, and that all of us here are in consensus that we want UMC to go away because we're sick of the shortfall. I don't think that should be resonated to those folks. And today we need to address those questions and dispel all of those myths that are out there. I also believe, you continuously talk about how we need to step up and better compete. I don't think that we need to be talking about competing with anybody. We need to focus in on ourselves look at who we are and what we have to work with and be the best we that we could be and not worry about everybody else.
That was so well said. I mean, there were so many different points in there, but look, we hear two situations here confronting our state, and that is education and healthcare, and common themes are running for both: dedicated funding stream. And Lawrence Weekly said it right there. And these are problems that need to be solved, but the problems that don't need to be keep being kicked down the road or given to somebody else to solve. We can solve these problems. The community together can solve these problems. We are Nevada, working with administrators, working with public officials, can come up with solutions that work. And we've done it before. This isn't something that some brave new idea that may or may not work. This has happened before.
Yeah, it looks like obviously privatization, consolidation, outsourcing. That is not the philosophy of We Are Nevada. We Are Nevada is out there to stand up for the middle class and keep the dedicated workers in the medical field, in the education field, in the public safety field, community partners, and everyone who really looks toward the middle class and looks towards the future and wants to make sure that working families make a decent wage and have a decent living, and then when they're done, they have a decent retirement. And as we've spoken before, giving people a decent retirement cuts down on added costs, health costs, and et cetera, as people get older, because now they're protected and they have a source of income to go ahead and get their health care needs.
So the next clip I'd like to play is from Jose when you spoke, and I thought, and it was interesting because after you spoke, a number of people contacted me and said, "Did you hear what Jose said?" So let's just listen to this one.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Solorio. I am chair of Si Se Puede, the Latino Democratic Caucus of the Clark County Democratic Party. I'm here to speak against any privatization of the governance of UMC. As a community, we feel it important that our public service hospital make decisions in the open. We do not agree with any private sector oversight which would make private decisions regarding a public hospital. And last time I spoke, I gave the example of my daughter who's at UNR, a freshman there who got sick, went to St. Mary's Hospital, a private hospital, and the treatment she got there compared to the treatment she got here at UMC was night and day. And I don't want to see our hospital go towards privatization where they're shuffled in and out without much care. She had trouble breathing, she had bronchitis, she had COPD, and they gave her a treatment and scooted her out the door. This is not the direction I want to see UMC go. I believe it important that you listen to Chris Giuliani and to Tom Collin, your legislators with legislative experience, who told you last time that it's important not to put a bill up there that could be changed night and day from its original form. So whatever your intent is, the legislative process could change it to something you don't like. So the risk is great, and your benefit is not very big. I believe the last time you said the benefit was you can make private decisions regarding the marketing, improvement, etc. I don't think you're going to get a lot of benefit for your risk. There's too much risk involved. I believe that our staff at UMC, they already get lower hourly rates than the private sector counterparts, and so they've already made a lot of sacrifices. And I think as 7 Democrats sitting here, the last thing we need to do is talk about privatization of a public service. That is not who we are. Democrats believe in the open process. We don't believe in privatization of public services. And I think that we should just not go forward with this. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that you consider what's in the best interest of the community. And I hope you vote in the right direction today. Thank you.
Great job, Jose. Any additional comments on that? Anything you forgot to say?
No, man. Just, there was some discussion by the commissioners when they got to talk, and they were saying that we were confused, that they're not going to privatize the hospital. That's not what's on the agenda. Right. But listen, when you have your board of directors giving direction to the CEO, and that board of directors is private sector and they're meeting in private, that's privatization. That's where all your major policies and decisions come forward from. That's privatization. So I don't care if they don't want to call it privatization.
Did they wave their hand in front of you and say that's not what it says?
No, I think Commissioner Brown was saying that there needed to be some clarification that they're not talking about privatizing the hospital. They're just going to change the governance board a little bit.
Just the governance board.
just the board that makes all the important policy decisions. So no, we don't need to go down the road of privatizations. I believe even if they approve it in 2 weeks or whenever it comes back, it'll be defeated in the legislature. We have too many real Democrats at the legislature who are going to knock this out.
Yeah, I thought that was really curious. They got into late in the this meeting, by the way, was 2.5 hours, and I'd like to, I sat through most of it, and then I watched it again on video because that's just that's what us radio guys like to do, is sit and watch these meetings and stuff so that we can digest it. But there was a lot of talk about deadlines, and they were getting close to deadlines, But Jose, I saw the second round of public comment when you came up and you talked about governance and this whole idea of, that this will have a big impact. In the clip that we heard from Commissioner Weekly, he's talked about a lot of confusion, and we heard from some workers there saying, "Please don't sell UMC," and that's not what it's at. What is that issue? What's that issue is giving the and there is a big issue here about the hospital and how the hospital runs and works and stays competitive while it's surrounded by all these for-profit hospitals, right? So, this is part of the problem, is that it's in a competitive way, it's kind of getting its butt kicked because there's all these for-profit hospitals that sometimes, imagine this, put profit before patients and rely on our safety net hospital. It's called safety net for a reason, because all the other hospitals are busy thinking about money, and so this hospital serves a very specific need, right? So, this is a situation where this hospital is really necessary. It needs to be protected. And one of the best ways for it to be protected is for the community just to speak out and make sure it knows what's going on.
And if I could say, what we shouldn't be doing is spending 6 months going towards a bill that'll get us nowhere. We should be spending the next 6 months lobbying the legislature to provide funding for the hospital, to work with the Medicaid, new Medicaid, expanding Medicaid, whatever the solutions are. We should be working on funding from this day forward, not on a bill that's going to go nowhere.
I agree.
I did some research on UMC. UMC was started in 1931. It was started as it was called the Indigent Hospital when it first started, and it was here to serve the workers that were coming in, flooding into the state to work on the Boulder Dam. What was happening back then, it's going to sound familiar, for every 4 workers that came in to work on the dam project, only one was getting hired, right? And so there was a lot of people that weren't employed. This hospital was established to take care of the whole community, not just the workers, but the whole community. Through the years, the hospital faced a lot of challenges, growth from the community, and also just funding problems. The commissioners, the Clark County commissioners, and the community always came together to solve these problems. And as was mentioned during the public comments, this is an opportunity now where we face similar problems. We have a future to look forward to with this hospital. This hospital serves a specific need. It's time for all of us to come together and do this work once again. So, this is, I think we'll be following this. It's an important issue, and it's something that...
We'll follow it all the way to the legislature.
Yep. At the Minnesota State AFL-CIO Convention, Hubert Humphrey, the 38th Vice President of the United States, said, "The story of the labor movement needs to be taught in every school in this land. America is a living testimonial to what free men and women organized in free democratic trade unions can do to make a better life. We ought to be proud of it." This week in labor history, December 5th, 2008, Wall Street bankers received a gift from the taxpayers of $1.2 trillion in secret loans. This is on top of the $700 billion in TARP funds they already received. The Federal Reserve and the big banks fought for more than 2 years to keep details of the largest bailout in U.S. history a secret. Now the rest of the world can see what it was missing. The Fed didn't tell anyone which banks were in trouble so deep they required a combined $1.2 trillion on December 5th, 2008, their single neediest day. Bankers didn't mention that they took tens of billions of dollars in emergency loans at the same time they were assuring investors their firms were healthy. And no one calculated until now that banks reaped an estimated $13 billion of income by taking advantage of the Fed's below-market rates. Saved by the bailout, bankers lobbied against government regulations, a job made easier by the Fed, which never disclosed the details of the rescue to lawmakers, even as Congress doled out more money and debated new rules aimed at preventing the next collapse. December 1st, 1966, the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association became the first nurses in Ohio to engage in mass resignation or strike. According to the American Nurses Association, it may have been the first concerted action by nurses in a labor dispute in the nation. December 1st, 1914. The labor song Solidarity Forever was written on this date by IWW songwriter Ralph Chaplin. He wrote the song for a hunger march to be led by Lucy Parsons in Chicago on January 17, 1915. And this ends our week in labor history for Friday, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. And before we go, let's listen to the famous Pete Seeger version of this classic song, Solidarity Forever.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Jeez, you got...
Nick, what are you laughing at?
Oh, man. Where do you get a load of this? I'm checking out BDRs on the state legislative website.
Well, let me take a look. Wow, we need to share this with our listeners. What should we call it?
Well, I think you got to call it what it is. Irma, take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce this week's f***ed up bill draft request.
Woo! Thank you, Irma, for that amazing intro.
Love hearing Irma's voice on
Another.
All right, guys. I got to ask you a question. So today, well, even it could be yesterday because today it's still the morning. So, you know, in the course of your day, what are things that are going on that are concerning to you? Like what, as far as like what's going on out there? Maybe it's gas prices. Maybe it's job. What's something that's a big concern?
The usual
to you?
Education, public safety, medical care issues for everyone. I mean, that's what affects your wallet. That's what affects quality of life. I mean, these are important issues, and I think probably the most concerning part for myself and a lot of people I speak with is that you have two sides in the Congress and in the U.S. Senate and nationwide that can't get along and not willing to bend on any issue to find common ground for the betterment of the good of the American people. So I know I took a little bit too long to explain that, but really
weighty
the
stuff.
problem is you have this divided country, and that's really the issue.
What bothers me is that the middle class continues to be attacked, and we're blamed for everything. And it's actually the exact opposite. For a business to exist, they need to make a profit. To make a profit, they need customers. Guess who the customers are? The middle class. Right. So I think the focus should get away on attacking us, the middle class, and actually helping us, the middle class, so that the businesses can have more business and more profits.
Exactly. So here's the situation, right? We're coming into a legislative session, and this is a process where our Public Employee Coalition, We Are Nevada, can come up with proposed bills and talk to our legislators about coming up with ways to strengthen our rights and to strengthen and protections, right? So, but now we have bill draft requests, and they're starting to be published. Placeholders are starting to be put up there in Carson City as we get closer, and they concern things such as limits civil liability of certain persons for injuries or death resulting from certain equine activities, or, for example, revises provisions relating to fishing. And these are the type of bill drafts that are starting to pop up. These are the burning issues that are of concern to legislators. And so here's the thing: they might be serious, but someone came up with this stuff. There's someone approached the legislator and said, "Look, there is a situation somewhere where liability for death resulting from team roping is a big problem."
Is
right?
it an inaccurate assumption to assume that's a special interest and that someone has a special interest and is going to send a lobbyist up to the legislature?
I want to take it even further than that. I'm saying that it all comes down to local politics. And starting on Monday, February 4th, here's an opportunity, as we're seeing in these bill draft requests that I'm kind of poking fun at. But here's an opportunity where every Nevadan can make a difference and have a voice, right? And this is what the Public Employee Coalition is for. Well, I should really broaden it. It's We Are Nevada, which is not only a public employee coalition, but it has community partners because we understand the seriousness of what needs to get done during this legislative session.
So each legislator gets elected for 2 years, assemblymen, for example, or state senators for 4 years, and they get like 2 or 3 bill drafts. They only get to pick 2 or 3, and liability regarding horses is part of their top 2 or 3 issues, burning issues that they need to advocate on.
And they're so vague, right? And this is the problem with the UMC one, is that they put in these things and the language, and as we get into the session, we'll demonstrate this even more and more clearly. But here's one, and you know what? This is a real hot button issue. Prohibits texting in certain circumstances.
Oh. Yeah, well, certain circumstances,
Now, we know that there's a texting law, which look, I drove here, and I drove a pretty decent number of miles, and I saw a bunch of people ignoring the law that's on there right now. And every time I stop at a stoplight, I see people ignoring that law. So now we're going to have, there's a new one here, prohibits texting in certain circumstances. That's it. That's as detailed as it gets. And that's why I started out this segment asking, what are your burning issues? And I want people in the audience to sit there and say, what am I worried about? What are the things that are like we talked about, like education, like jobs, like the cost of things, inflation, gas prices going up and down and up and down, and there's some serious issues that need to be tackled. But it's not too late, even though, to Jose's point, we have legislators who have used up their allotment of bill draft requests. It's not too late for us to still have a voice and make an impact up there.
Well, let me just say that for listeners who have not been to the legislature, and I know we all have, but on the one hand, yeah, they submitted all their bill drafts and they have a limit, and I understand that, but I can tell you that there were being bill drafts and amendments were being submitted up until probably 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the session.
Oh yeah,
and then the cutoff date was, I believe, about mid-April, where no other bill drafts can be submitted, and there was a ton submitted after that. So there's a, it's a process. Killing bill drafts is pretty easy, but bringing them back to life, they call them zombie bills, right?
Oh yeah,
the zombie bill, it's like dead, but it's not really dead.
We'll be watching those, and they change and they morph into something completely different. And we saw this firsthand last session, where a bill came in and it said one thing, and by the time that thing came out of the session and was approved, it was something totally different and very, very scary. And that's why we are looking at this stuff very seriously. I'm going to be telling you about it, and in future segments like this, we'll be telling you who sponsored this bill, how you could reach that person and call them if you don't like it. If you don't like the information that you heard, or if you support it, and that's what this is. And that's what this is all about. Heck, we had our own members go up to Carson City, sit in front of the legislative body, and tell them, look, this is why this bill draft that you have proposed is messed up, and it's going to hurt people, it's going to hurt jobs, it's going to hurt working families, and it needs to be changed in this way. And that had an impact, and that actually is a way after the elections. After it's all said and done and packaged up, and you're back in your life, and you're saying, this is the way it is. But no, we can definitely make an impact.
Well, we'll as we move forward, we'll be going through the definitions of the bill drafts. We'll be explaining it, and as bill drafts are changes or amendments to the law, so they actually go into the Nevada revised statutes or to the Nevada Administrative Code, and they look at language and they try to manipulate the language or change it to try and make it so that something works better or doesn't work as well. And obviously, if there's a fiscal note, it has to go through certain committees if it has money attached to it, which can hold it up for weeks at a time. So it's quite complicated, and we'll be keeping an eye on this as we move forward.
I want to just add something real quick. I want to simplify this because I've been guilty of not having followed bills through the legislative process. Maybe 99% of people don't do that.
Sure.
But, this last election, we had 80% of registered voters actually come out and vote. So I think voters care. But we care as a middle class. So this is my challenge. I want all our listeners to, and we'll provide this probably in our We Are Nevada website, but I want all our listeners to look at 2 or 3 bills that they support. And we're going to show you on that website how you can go about supporting it. If it's a simple email, if it's a phone call, if it's talking to your legislature, we'll have lots of options for you to participate. So if we can provide you with the how-to, all I'm asking is that you take 2 or 3 of the bills that you think are the most important and get involved.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's a great idea.
Just get involved. And when we do that, that's how we make change.
Yep, I think so. I think that's a great idea. And I love this segment. I'm looking forward to looking at these every single week.
You are listening to the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show with your co-hosts Nick the Archangel and Leonard Cardinelli, right here on KLAV 1230 AM and streaming live at www.klav1230am.com. Do you have a question about how collective bargaining works here in Nevada? Do you have a question about the public pension system here in Nevada? Are you wondering what's going to happen with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security? These are some of the questions that we dig into right here on the We Are Nevada Talk Radio Show every Friday morning at 9 a.m. right here on 1230 AM KLAV. The call-in number is 702-731-1230. 702-731-1230. Give us a call if you have a question or a comment.
Let's talk about PERS, man! Pension talk.
I never get tired of that intro, Nick. Really loving it. What do we got this morning? I hear there's an article out there that, shall we say, bends the truth?
Bends the truth. So, you have this former, he was a former Clark County manager, right? Tom Riley?
On a Nevada public employee pension, is he not?
Yeah. Well, there's that distinction.
Boy, he's living good, huh?
Yeah, well,
but he hates it now.
Oh, yeah, he does. You would never, that's what you would think if you read any of his material. I believe he has a book out there. And the sad thing is that there's a lot of people who are paying attention to what this guy is writing. But he published something in the paper this weekend, the paper that I use to clean up waste and stuff around the house. Or
how
use to
come they
paint
always
things.
publish their stuff? I've sent him stuff. I've never seen it.
Oh, well, we'll have to follow up on that. I'm sure that these are answers to questions that we need to know.
I'm sure they want to be fair.
Look, I went through this thing with a highlighter and a pen, line by line, and every single line is incorrect. Let's just, I don't want to read it out, but I do want to read the first line, which is, Nevada's pension system is one of the most generous public employee retirement plans in the nation. Well, what? We know that it pays on average less than Social Security.
Okay, let me ask you this: what makes it generous? Because it's it's the employee's money, right? The example that I use, actually, I talked to a couple of members last night because they were talking about the increase, and that's not really our subject today. But I'm speaking with them, and I'm telling them it's like, for example, let's say you get hired for $14 an hour.
Yeah,
that's your pay. That's what we agreed to pay you. Well, $12 an hour of it goes into your paycheck. And then $1 an hour goes to your PERS, and then $1 an hour comes from the employer to go to your PERS. But it's all your pay that was negotiated when you were hired and agreed to when you were hired. In other words, it's not extra money that you get on top of what you get. And since when did it become a bad idea to work for 25 or 30 years and then have a decent retirement?
And I want to get to that one in a second, too. I do like where you're going with this, though, because think of how ridiculous that sounds. That would be you're looking at your financial statements, your 401ks that you put into if you work for a private company, and you're seeing good returns, and you're saying, and again, this is your money that you're investing, and the system is paid for in large part 80% by returns on the investment, and now all of a sudden you're looking at it and saying, this is too generous. My money's I've earned a return on my investment, and I'm going to be able to have a decent retirement. There's got to be something wrong with that.
Let me read a line from the article. At the same time, Nevada ranks in the bottom fifth of states with regard to the percent of funded pension liabilities. It is generally assumed that pensions funded at 80% or less have a serious problem. Nevada's at 71% funded. Now, the average person, when they read that, they go, oh my God, it's got to be at 80% because that's what's assumed nationwide, and they're only at 71. But what's interesting about this is they don't name these supposed states, because I can tell you right now that according to Nevada PERS, they are the top 5 in the country as far as stability and return on investment. And when they look at it, they don't look at what's going to happen in 2015, 2016, 2018. They look at what's going to happen in 30, 40, 50 years down the road, because in order for you to get through the cycle, it's a 30-year process. So when they look at Nick the Archangel, for instance,
that's me.
They make the assumptions from the beginning of your employment to the end of your employment, and they take that assumption and they bring it in. But it's like we sometimes at work, or in life or in politics, you hear I have it from a very good source.
Yeah.
So like we're going to put this poster up at our job, and it's going to say it's going to have a shadow of a person's face, and it's going to say looking for very good source. So I would like to know what these states are that have this 80% and above, because that's what's assumed.
So also, it was great that you pointed that one out, because that was one of those few. I went line by line, and that was one of the few that I wrote next to it. Not true! ! Right? Because look, this is the deal. They say that it's if it's under 80%, that has a serious problem. That is not. It's just not true. The people who analyze these things and do the actuaries on these things, if it's under 70, then they say it needs to be looked at, and they have to see what's happening there. But the thing is that, and this 71% number isn't even correct. The number has increased. Right, as far as
it will once the increase in PERS. But
the reason it's even at that number, right, is because, as we spoke about last week, we've seen wave after wave of layoffs, and we've seen cuts in pay that have cut these employees. These employees contributing to their PERS. So, and again, it goes to that message that we have about messing with the funding flow going into PERS. I just want to talk about the other sentence up towards the top here that says the system has no minimum retirement age as long as the retiree has 30 years of service, right?
That's not true.
Well, yeah, I know.
It says no retirement age. That's not true.
And if you look at the Clark County, Nevada Employee Compensation Overview Report from calendar year 2011 with the comparative data 2010 and 2009 data, you will see in this report that the average county worker is spending 9.1 years in the system, right? 9.1 years. So they're talking about...
They're not even getting a retirement.
Yeah, well... They qualify.
When they get to the right age, I guess there's some penalties and such, and it'll be very small.
Exactly. Right.
And
exactly.
it won't. It's not comparative to a person who stays 20 years, 30 years, reaches age 50 in our case, police fire, or stays 30 years in the case of most public employees.
Yeah.
And something I wanted to mention, because people might be listening and go, well, Nick and Len have not accounted for that 9% that they say they're upside down. So let me explain it this way. Any business has an operating expense, does it not?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you have to invest in order to get product, and then you sell the product, the money comes in, you carve out the profits, but there's an operating money. There's money in and money out. If a company does $5 million worth of business per year, that might be, there might be $5 million in and $5 million out, but only $1 million of that may be profit, and operating expenses may be $1 million or $2 million in between, along with employee salaries. So in other words, with the Nevada PERS system, there's an operating amount of money, and it's been operating at 70% for a very long time, and it has not hurt the fund in any way, shape, or form. So what they're doing is they're taking this void of this operating expenses, the actuarial money that goes in and out, and they're trying to account that as an unfunded liability. In other words, taking your house payment, and since it hasn't posted to the account yet, saying that it's a liability even though you paid it, if that makes sense.
You know what? And this is the thing. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about unfunded liability, but the fact of the matter is, with unfunded liability, this is smoke and mirrors. Hey, look at the shiny object over here type of argument. Because when you look at the public employee retirement system and the rate of return over 25 years through thick and thin, through one of the worst recessions ever, the doggone thing still returned an average of 8 or 9%.
It was
right?
21% last year and 11% the year before.
Yeah.
And it was something like 4.5 billion. And what's interesting about that is, so you have this high rate of return, right? And so it's being successful. But what articles like this don't point out and don't factually say is that 80% of the retirees that are paid from the PERS system comes out of the return on investment. Only 20% comes from the actuarial value. So if imagine if you were allowed, or you were so comfortable financially that you could pay 80% of your bills from your return on your investments, and only 20% came from your paycheck. Does that sound like someone who would go broke quickly? Like they're saying, if we don't do something soon, this is going to fall apart in the next few years, and it doesn't appear that way. In the next paragraph, it talks about how it's behind closed doors.
Oh yeah, I was going to jump into that. Seriously, that part
largely out of the public view.
Look, I'm telling you, this.
So
part,
like our salaries are on the internet, and our compensations are on the internet.
This is. I don't know this guy. I never met him. I've only been in the part of this the county and involved in this whole system for a few years, right? But I'm just telling you right now. Either he does know what the heck he's talking about, he's a space cadet, or he's just being totally disingenuous. Because to say that this defined benefit program has a lack of transparency, that's exactly the way it's designed right now, is to have transparency. It's a public board.
You can go on the website and get just about any information that you want. You can go on the internet and find out what people's contribution is. You can call PERS and get an idea of what the average contribution rate is across the board for public employees and or police and fire. So I don't understand where, maybe, is he in a bubble maybe?
I think so.
Bubble?
And the people who are making these investments are accountable. What do you think would happen if it switches over to a defined contribution program where now all of a sudden the investments that are being made in the interest of shareholders instead of the public? Right? And instead of in the best interest of the public, you're going to see an increase in fees. All the things that you saw during congressional hearings over the past few years about these 401ks and their hidden fees and what's going on and the return. It's going to be it's a money grab basically.
Can I give my mortgage example?
Oh yeah, go ahead. So
somebody comes to you and they say, I want to buy your mortgage. And then you make payments to me. But in the meantime, I'm going to take your mortgage and I'm going to invest it in a 401k on Wall Street or whatever kind of investment style that we're talking about. And then they say, well, what happens if it doesn't do well? And they go, oh, well, then you're on the hook for the money. So you say, okay, so you want to take my mortgage, you want to buy it, you want me to make the payments, then you want to take the money from the mortgage and invest it in a volatile fund or try to make money fast like an economist. But if it goes badly, I'm on the hook for the money. That's kind of what they're saying, in my view.
Oh yeah. And so, of course, in this article, with that premise, there's the R word comes in, reform. And look, and I don't even know how this even fits in with public employee retirement system. When you're talking about financials and you're talking about return on investment, and you're talking over long term and how that works and where this money should be invested and how this should work and who should get their money back. And then it comes to, we need to emphasize rewarding performance instead of job security and time served. Since when does your retirement become a reward? This is an investment. This is an investment that these employees are making. It's theirs. They own it. This isn't their reward.
So how come everyone who wants to help us is not in the system? Like, you don't hear anyone who's in the system fighting for changes in PERS. It's an outside businessmen, it's conservatives, it's legislators
so
that
much
don't
money.
believe in it. And well, that's what I'm saying.
This is the conversation that was in the room. Wow, man. The Dow's been stuck here at what, 12,000 for how long? Internet, the .coms is nothing to. Yeah, internet, they're making money. China, I'm not, overseas. It's just too volatile overseas. We need money. We need more volume into this. Into this
Nevada
market.
has $25.7 billion just sitting there for the taking.
No kidding. Wait a second. So we raided California and Florida and New Jersey, and we sank their public employee systems, but there's still money out there? Nevada still has money? There's gold in them dar hills. Let me get over to Nevada and take those public employees' money. Doggone it. How did we miss that?
We'll run a public campaign, and we'll hit up the legislators, and then we'll hit the newspaper, and we'll hit the media, and we'll spread a lot of propaganda that is kind of true, but really ain't true.
Oh, wait. This is my favorite one. Public employees are greedy. They always fall for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody puts their life on the line for strangers every day for the pay and benefits.
Don't even say those crazy details. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear they're greedy and they're, and this pension money, the fact that it's theirs, that's a crazy technicality. Nobody will believe that these are we're exaggerating, but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if these are some of the strategy conversations that are going on to try and, take this money, it's a huge amount of money. Who wouldn't love to be able to control this amount of money and get a percentage here and there of billions and billions of dollars?
So in the article, it says that they want to try to lower the contribution rate for future employees. And to me, that's like saying that my budget is based on a certain paycheck, right? This is easy. This is kind of the way I look at it. My budget's based on a paycheck, and someone's saying to me, well, from now on, for the next 20 or 30 years, we're going to give you just a little bit less money in your paycheck, but we want your budget to stay the same. And I'm saying, well, my budget's intact. Okay, if you lower my pay, it's going to affect my budget. It's going to affect the rate at which I invest my money. So if we have an intact system and they want to cut into it into the future, and it's based on a 30 or 40 or 50-year plan or more, then people are not realizing that it's going to affect the contribution rate, not only of the current retirees, but of the retirees in the future.
Yep. Disrupt the funding flow, and it's going to eventually lead to a taxpayer bailout of a pension system, as it has in other states, and as it did for mortgages and other systems. This is the last thing I'll just say on this article. I'll get your thoughts on this, but he says, our elected leaders of both parties must do their jobs and reform this system to protect the public interest. Absolutely. And here's the reform that has to take place. The public employee retirement system needs to be strengthened so that it can withstand these insane attacks and this looting of public employee systems, which not only hurts the people who are doing the job day in and out, right? It's a lack of respect for them, but it also will hurt the retirees, and eventually it will sandbag the taxpayers with a bailout program while the fat cats and the bankers get rich.
Well, the We Are Nevada coalition is going to stand up for the middle class. They're going to stand up for their right to have a retirement when they retire after 20, 25, 30 years, whatever they so choose. And the We Are Nevada coalition and the community partners, we're going to be there in the legislature, and we're going to be talking to the legislators about these kinds of issues in an effort to retain what we have, and if it's possible, maybe make it even stronger as we move forward.
I know this is actually, I think, the longest we've ever spoken on PERS, but I think it warranted it. This is, this was a special to the Review Journal that, doggone it, I said the paper's name, but that's all right. Special to the RJ that appeared recently. You can look it up online. I think people should read this thing online, and I think they should do their own research and take it in context with what we said here today. But look, dig and get the facts from the Public Employee Retirement System website, because I think you'll see. Obviously, I was really animated about it because I'm angry. You read this stuff and you just can't even believe what they're trying to put across and how they're trying to hurt the state.
Well, it looks like another interesting PERS segment, and we're going to pick up on this next week, and we're going to continue to put out the accurate information and the talking points so that our members and the listeners have the talking points they need as we move forward to the legislature.
And it's been a jam-packed show. Jose, we have about a minute left. I'll give you the last word.
All right.
The last word by Jose Solario.
Well, somos Nevada. Sí se puede. We are Nevada. Yes, we can. So I want to say we can make a difference, all of us together. And what I mean by that, this last week at the county commission, people came out and started talking to their commissioners. People started to voice their opinions. And what seemed to be an ordained vote beforehand was no longer ordained. Our commissioners are starting to listen. They're starting to get worried. And you know what? That's good. That's very good, because we're putting our voice out there. Yeah, I know it's hard. I know we're busy. But just take a day, take an issue, even just one issue, and say, what's important to you? How can I get involved? Somos Nevada, si se puede. We are Nevada, and yes, we can. And together, we can make a difference. Let's start talking to our legislators. Let's become involved citizens, because you know what? We made a difference in these last elections. We are making a difference at the county commission. We can make a difference at our legislator. Talk to your neighbor, talk to your coworker, talk to your union member, talk to your community group. Porque sí podemos. Yes, we can. We can make a difference. And listening to this radio show once a week is a start.
Gracias,
but becoming
Jose.
active, yes.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.